Thanks for coming back, everybody. We've officially concluded our Titanic series, so we're going to jump right into the next theme of things. This video is just going to focus on a little old movie that a lot of you know called Star Wars. I'm going to show you how to do a little sandbox infinite scrolling effect, all with some fixed div elements with the content inside kind of stacked on top of each other. We're going to make it really big so that when user scrolls, it gives the illusion that they're staying in place, but all the content's scrolling, and it's all going to be those famous Star Wars opening title crawl. So feel free to watch along and build it with me if you'd like. Let's do it. Jumping right in, here we are inside of our body. I gave it a black background just so we can see what we're working with. First thing I'm going to do is add a grid, our lovely grid friend. I'm going to make 5 columns here, and 2 rows should be good. First thing I'm going to do in here, I'm going to add a div block. I'm going to call this Lottie container div. And inside here, I'm going to add a Lottie element. So what I did is I went to LottieFiles.com. It's a great resource. I've talked about it a few times before. You'll see here I found some twinkling stars. You can search for whatever you want, but we're going for that space effect. So right now it has a black background, but if you just go right here, you can delete all that. And you can't see it because the stars are white, but right now it has a transparent background, which is what we're going for just in case we change our background color later. It just adds some more flexibility. I'm going to click download right here, Lottie JSON. And when you get that, a little file is going to pop up. And when you download your file, you'll go to your assets here, and it'll show up in your Lotties, and you can just import one of those right in there. So I'm going to click and drag that, and you'll see here we've got our twinkling stars. One thing I'm going to check off is loop right there, because I want it to cycle through multiple times, not just play the animation once. I'm going to click use built-in duration. I don't want to use that. I'm going to make it my own. I'm going to make a 10-second duration, and I'm actually going to make the opacity of these. First, let's just name this Lottie Stars. I'm going to make the opacity 50%, just to give it a little faded look. So when I click play, you'll see the slowly fading twinkling stars in and out, just in that one corner though. We want it to take up the whole screen. How can we do this? Well, what we can do here, we can make sure we're in our grid, and I am going to make sure this grid is positioned, fixed, and if I click full right here, it'll take up the full viewport of our screen. So even when the user scrolls, this is what's going to stay in place. So this gives the illusion that we always have our stars here. And we have that in our first cell. And if we just copy and paste this cell here, it'll fill the next empty space. So I'm really just going to make 10 of them because that'll fill up the entire amount that we can see. Now when I click play, we've got a whole grid of Lottie stars twinkling in and out, and it looks like we are in space. Very nice. Gives the illusion that it covers the whole screen too. Even when we scroll, that's what's going to be there. Beautiful. And just to give you a little preview of what the structure of this kind of is, all of this is going to be a lot of fixed elements. So position fixed is going to be our friend here. It's going to be a lot of divs all inside one big div. And that one big div is going to have a really big height, 200 VH specifically, and that way it's really large, and all the little divs, when they're positioned fixedly inside it, we'll be able to scroll the full width of its parent, but we'll just fade in the different divs in and out, so it gives the illusion that as they're scrolling, new content is appearing, but it looks like we're staying in place at the same time. It sounds a little tricky, but we'll do it out together. So here's the finished project, a little look at what we're going to be doing. And this is our little down arrow animation here. It's going to show a little teaser, tell the user to scroll down, that there's more content. So when they start scrolling, we'll see the long time ago in a galaxy far away. Famous, famous quotes. And then when we scroll, we'll get, ta-da, Star Wars, scaling down just like in the movie. And then that fades back, and we have our long scrolling text. This is episode 4, to all of my fans out there. I love Star Wars, but I'm not a super fan, so I'm doing my best to get all these details right, but I know I'm going to disappoint somebody out there. Can't win them all. So we got the scrolling text as you scroll here. It's like going into the abyss. We add a little transform on this. And then when you just keep scrolling, little Yoda to say goodbye. Not Yoda, not Baby Yoda, the child, aka Grogu. Thank you, Mandalorian Season 2. Great work this season. So don't call it Baby Yoda anymore, guys. I know we got used to that, but it's not Baby Yoda. It's the same species, but it's not Yoda. It's Grogu. So that's the site. It's just one long div full of fading in and out divs that are fixed position, and it gives the illusion that we're scrolling through. And a little kiss goodbye from Grogu. So first thing, make sure we're in our body. I'm going to click div block. I'm going to call this scroll div, and I'm going to make this height here, right here, 200 VH. So that way it's very large, and we'll have room to keep scrolling to the other content as we make it. So that's the only thing I'm going to set on this. And the first thing I want to put inside here is another div block. This will be our scroll down div. So this lives within scroll div. Everything we build from this point on is going to live within scroll div. And they're all going to be positioned fixed, fully, and have a flex center. There we go. So scroll down divs, got that. And I want to add a Lottie animation within here. I'm going to click Lottie. Another Lottie that I have is just these animated down arrows. And I'm going to click loop. Remember, we like to use that. It keeps it playing. I'm going to call this scroll down Lottie. I'm going to make the height and width just 100 by 100. So a little smaller to work with. And when I click play, you'll see that it sits in the center here and it's animating, telling the user to just keep scrolling down. Great. All right, so as we build these, they're all just kind of stack on top of each other because they're all in these big squares that are fixed the full width, right? Fixed, and then they'll just stack on top. So I'm just going to hide this as we keep working. Scroll div, add a new div. Next thing I want to add, this is going to be called Galaxy div, and fixed, full, and flex center. And inside here I'm going to put a paragraph. This will be called Galaxy text. I can make this a nice blue color similar to the one in the movie. 134 FF1. I can make the height 80 pixels. Well, that's the size, and the height will be 100 pixels. I'm going to make the text. I added a font here. You can go to the settings of your website and just add new fonts. I added Nanu Gothic, close to the Star Wars font there. And George Lucas did not write Lorem Ipsum. So I'll write the actual text here. This will be a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Dot, 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 dot. And just to keep true even more so to the movies, I'm going to give it a set width that breaks it onto the correct lines, because the real one has the second far away on its own line there. So I can do this by just being on the Galaxy text. I'm going to make a width of 1200 pixels. Great. Beautiful. So that's our next div, Galaxy div. I'm going to hide that as well. Moving along, scroll div, add another div. And you guessed it, fixed, full, center, flex. This will be called logo div. And inside we're going to put our Star Wars logo. So we can just go to image, and the image we choose will be Star Wars logo right there. There's our image. I will name this logo. To start, it's actually going to be pretty large, because if you look back in our main thing here, you see how it grows huge just like in the movie, and then kind of fades into view and shrinks for the user or the viewer. So we're going to do the same thing. So its initial state is going to have a transform. I'm going to scale it up 8 times the width that it already is. That way it's kind of off screen a little bit, and then we'll animate it so it shrinks into view later. Great, that's our logo. And now I'm going to hide this div as well while we keep working. We did our arrows down, we did our galaxy, we did our big logo. Next thing is our paragraph. So this is the trickiest one here. So let's see. Go to our scroll div, add another div block. This will be called title scroll div. And this one's going to be fixed. And instead of positioning it full, this one's actually going to be positioned on the top. And I'll explain why as we go along. But it's basically because we need to allow some room for the text to be hidden, and then as the user scrolls, it's going to give that illusion of kind of fading diagonally into the background. So by putting it on the top of the screen, it allows the paragraph to be pushed downwards later. So let's just go ahead and add our paragraph text inside here. So title scroll div, it's got that fixed top positioning, and this is going to be another paragraph. Let's call this title scroll paragraph. Color of this, be a nice gold color. ECD 900, nice. And it's going to be 50 pixels by about 98 pixels high. Get a little spacing in the paragraphs. And again, we don't want lorem ipsum for episode 4 of Star Wars. We want the real text, giving us a little history and, you know, setup for the movie. Okay, there we go. Let's space this out nicely. This looks right. All right, and we can change the font to that Nanum Gothic, more recognizable there. I'm going to make the width 50% of its container, but I'm going to make sure the title scroll div is flex, center, right? So now that's there. So paragraph's there, but we want it to be angled, right? Like the way we have it here. And this is a little tricky. So to get that effect, we're just going to add a little rotation property. So when we are on our title scroll paragraph, just go to rotate. We're going to add a rotate of 45 degrees on the x-axis. And you'll see now it kind of shrinks back a little bit, but doesn't look quite right. And this is because it's not recognizing the 3D space and doesn't transform properly. So if we just go to its parent element, which is the title scroll div, we can actually go to right here and we can add a children perspective. And this can be something like 450. And when we do that, you'll see now the rotation is more 3D and more in the whole space. And that looks like the title crawl that we're all used to seeing. All right, so now I can hide this one as well. And we just have one more div that will live beneath this. So make sure we're in our scroll div. I'm gonna add another div. This will be, let's call this Grogu div. Seems appropriate. And again, fixed, full, flex center. And I'm gonna add a Lottie animation because he is also an animation. And somebody made this on Lottie. I googled Star Wars and I had a few options. There were some BB-8s, but I thought this was cute and appropriate. So here's Baby Yoda. I'm gonna loop this guy, right? Not Baby Yoda, Grogu, sorry. Breaking my own rules here. So there's Grogu. And I'm gonna shrink him a little bit because he's cuter when he's smaller. 300 by 300 is okay. When I click play really quick, you'll see, there he is. I wish they had him holding the mug. That's the cutest shot. But blowing a kiss is still cute. All right, so there he is there. And I'm just gonna add my own little signature beneath this too. And let's see, I'm in the right div here. This is just gonna be a text link. And I can change the text to designed by Cullen Kuch. That's me. Just call this portfolio link because I had this link to my portfolio on my actual version of this. And you can do a similar version if this is what you're doing because you should always take credit for your work. If you build something fun and you're proud of it, you should share it. Tell people how they can reach out to you or they know who built it. No shame in that. So you'll see how these are stacking next to each other. I can actually go back to Grogu div and I'll change this to vertical direction for flex and then boop, pops up right there. I'm gonna grow this a little bit, make that like 24 pixels. I don't want that underline, so I'm gonna text decoration none. And a nice little trick that a lot of people might not know about. If you highlight any kind of section of a link or text, you can create kind of a little mini subclass or a span. So I'm gonna wrap this with a span. And now it's its own element, so I can just make a class of my name. And if I wanna emphasize my name here, I can just add like a greenish blue color, something like Grogu. That looks good. But I'm gonna make the whole thing in general white. There we go. Maybe a little margin on the top there. So that's that bottom section. Now we have all of our divs. So as you see here, like I said, the main div, the scroll div, has that height of 200 VH. So it's 200 times the viewport height. So it has all this extra breathing room. So the user can scroll. And then we'll use that whole distance of the scroll to set animations to occur for each of these little divs nested inside. They're basically just going to use opacity and appear in and out of them. The only one that's different is the text scroll. That's going to have some move position, so it's further beneath, and then it'll scroll upwards into view. So let's do the interactions, because that's probably the trickiest part here. I am going to display all these back into view. So I'm just going to go back here, and I'm going to do flex, 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 flex. All of them were flex. And great. Now scroll div is where the interaction is going to take place. This is the 200 VH div, and this is the one that will have a scroll interaction on it because everything lives inside it. So while scrolling in view is what we're going to be targeting here. And first thing we want to do, let's play scroll animation. We're going to create an animation. This will be main scroll div. So we want most of these things to be hidden when we're first starting out, right? So we can kind of go one by one here. So I'm going to make Grogu hidden. I'll make an opacity, set it to 0 initially. And I'll make my portfolio link also 0. So you'll see I just made all those opacity 0, all the elements that we don't want to see, and the first thing we will see is the down arrow. That's the one that we want to be initially set. And you'll see all these little caution triangles over here. That just means you haven't set a second interaction for that. So right now they all have an initial state, but they don't change into anything. So Webflow is kind of just warning you, like, you didn't set a second state. So make sure if you want this animation to happen, you're going to need to have 2 different kind of values. We've got the scroll down Lottie highlighted. And right now, let's set the opacity to 100, because that's the one thing that's in view. And then after a period of time, a period of scrolling that is, we want it to disappear. So let's say at 3%, it'll disappear. So if I click opacity here, and I change this to 0, and I click live preview, you'll see how Grogu's popping up, and it's not exactly in the spot that we want it to be. So it's kind of recognizing that we're already scrolling into view, so it already is a percentage down. You'll see it's already at 50%, but we want to add an offset to this, because that way it'll push the starting point and it'll give the illusion that we're starting earlier, so we can fully see all the things we're building. So if we just click on right up here, and when element starts entering, we're going to add an offset, and it adds 50% automatically, so that should be good for now. And it does the same for exiting, so that'll be our friend for this. So now when I go back, or if I click preview up here, we see just the arrow, and when I scroll down, it disappears. And Grogu's appearing because we've set an opacity for him, but he's like a little ghost. Alright, so we've got the arrows. And let's keep going forward. So once that arrow disappears, we're going to add an interaction for our galaxy text, in a galaxy far, far away. We're going to add opacity as well. But let's make this happen around 6%, let's say. This will be 100, so it'll fade into view around 6%. Around 16%. Once it's scrolled for a second and the user still is reading it, it will fade out again and make way for the next element. So if I put live preview on, got the arrow, I'm going to scroll down, and then 3% hits, we see it. 6% it's full opacity, and then it's going to fade away. I'm going to get rid of Grogu at the bottom because he keeps popping up here. He's also called Lottie Animation, so let me change his name really quick. I'm going to name him Grogu Lottie. Alright, buddy. Now you can disappear. Sorry about that. Okay, so next thing we want is our big Star Wars title to come in, right? It's going to come from huge and then shrink. So make sure we're highlighted on our logo. And we're going to add a scale as well in the beginning, just so it knows how big it should be. It's going to be 8. So it has an opacity of 0 initially, but it's huge. So then at 25%, I'm going to make the opacity also 0 at 25%, just so it stays hidden to make sure. And then at 33%, when it's its turn to be seen, I will put 100. So now when I press preview, I'm going to go up here in a galaxy, there we go. And now it'll start appearing right after this. It'll be huge. There she is. Alright, so now that's fading into view. Now we can affect the scale. So let's say around 66% of the way down, the scale of the logo will go back to 0. So that way it'll be shrinking the entire time, right? So from 1, the first time it appears, it's still 8 and it's still big, but then it scales down and it'll go to 0 once we get there. So you'll see how it doesn't let me scroll anymore past this. So once we add the text in for the paragraph scroll, the titles, we're going to move that downwards and it's going to create some more space and allow us to keep scrolling. So when we move forward to that, we're going to make sure we're on our title scroll here. R55 is fine. I'm going to have a move. And this is going to move on the Y and the Z axis, 1100 pixels. That way it's kind of coming out and upwards. It's giving that illusion of the flat scroll towards the screen there. That'll be the starting point. And at 95%, we're going to have that whole middle section. It's going to be moving to -500 on the X and the Z. And that's why it's also positioned top, right? So it has that space to move upwards. But we can't see this happening, so let's just make sure we add the opacity now. At 40% we have it here, we're gonna have it at 0, just to make sure it's still invisible. And then around 90% of the way down, we can set this to 100. So now let's just preview this and see what we got going on. So got the arrow, we've got the long time ago. Keep scrolling down, that'll fade out, and the logo will come in. We never faded out our Galaxy text, did we? 6%, it becomes 100. 16. Oh, this should be 0 because it's leaving the picture. So now we live preview. So you'll see here, everything's working nicely, but then it kind of gets stuck when we get here. It's not letting us go any further. So there's another thing I just forgot to check off. So we did our offset boundaries, but we forgot to do the end offset as well. We had one for the beginning, but we just want to make sure there's a 50% offset at the end of the animation. And now that way, when we click preview, it'll keep going further. So now that comes in, and then the paragraph will continue on to what we tell it. So great, let's keep going really quick. So in our main scroll div, we also want to make sure that the title scroll has a rotation, just like we'd set initially over there. So title scroll, this will be rotate. On the X, it'll be 45 degrees. So we moved the paragraph, we got some opacity going. Now let's live preview this. Star Wars shrinks, and then the Rebel comes up. Opacity, we want this to, yeah, it's 100 here. And then around 97, let's make the opacity 0 for this. That way it starts to fade away. All right, so let's just preview this again. Here we go. See, we have the rotation set, and it's on the Z and the Y axis. We're moving it towards -500, so it's slanted along the Z and the Y, and it starts at 1100 down below, and it's moving this whole time we're scrolling to -500. So that gives it the illusion that it's scrolling, right? And it's on the angle, so it makes that 3D effect, and because the parent has perspective set to it. Okay. Next thing we want to happen is Grogu. Now it's his time to shine. So I'm going to go to the Grogu div. I'm going to click Grogu, and around 98% of the way there, I'm going to add opacity. I'm going to make it 100, and also with, let's see, I'll add one more for Grogu. It'll be, yeah, 100%. Then it'll go back to 0 for the opacity. And then I'll make sure my portfolio link is the same thing. So down here at 98, I'll click the plus, I'll click opacity, 100 at first, and then opacity is 0. Live preview, scrolling down, oops. Oh, you know what, yeah, I switched these, so these should be 0, because we don't want them to start fading into view this entire stretch of the scroll. We want, when the user hits here at this point, to be 0, and then that last 2%, they'll fade into view. Okay, that should be good. So now my live preview, scroll down, rebels, that fades, and then ta-da-da! Beautiful. I can save this, I can preview this. So it starts, we've got our Lottie animations twinkling, we have our arrow pointing down. I'm going to scroll down as it tells me. I'm going to read that a long time ago, keep scrolling. And then main big text. Spirit of Civil War. Okay. That scrolls and fades into the abyss. And then last but not least, little Grogu animation. And I could add a link here. It doesn't go anywhere, but you can add your portfolio link or wherever you want it to go to. And then when you keep scrolling back up, it'll replay the animation in reverse, and then you can just keep going. So this isn't like a fade into view interaction where something will fade in and then it's there on the page. These are strictly tied to scroll interactions, all in the percentage of that big 200 VH div that they live in. So as long as we scroll back and forth, the whole thing will continue along that track that we set. This is really fun to build, actually. I just had an idea, try to incorporate Star Wars, because I know it's a popular franchise and movie series, and I just kind of kept playing around with things and thought I would try this, because I've seen this effect done a few times. I think it's called a sandbox scroll I'm not really sure if there's a technical name for it, but yeah, that's just that big extended div where things live and you can scroll infinitely. So I hope you learned something from this. You can apply it to anything you want. You can put it on a portfolio site or a regular site and maybe have a contact form appear at the bottom. You can have a company's logos or past clients kind of scrolling through, but stay fixed. Whatever you want. Possibilities are endless. So hope you learned something from it. If so, give me a like and a subscribe. Really appreciate it. And we'll see what we do in the next one. Stick around.